Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, how are my snipers doing today? I hope you guys are doing fantastic. Listen, today we're going to be talking about the one and only Zebec network. Now, listen, right? We have a post from Zebec saying our progress towards our 2025 compliance roadmap. We've been working hard behind the scenes to meet major regulatory milestones. Security and compliance are essential to everything we build, right? With GateNux, we're making sure we meet the highest standards. And we could see, right? This is the compliance milestone tracker, right? Boom, SOC2, final audit underway, completion expected by the end of August, MICA white paper under review, approval expected in September, and an ISO in progress expected at the end of 2025. So you can see these are the things we're going to be looking at over the next few months if they are getting completed or if things have changed or been delayed. But look, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about the price action because we have had a weekly candle close, and I want to say what that means for us. When we go on the weekly, we can see that the last 2 weeks have been very, very nice. Um, even back here on 3 weeks ago when we're halfway through the week, I was saying if we get a nice close above this low over here, this low of 0.0027, I was saying practically if we close anywhere above that on the weekly, we should be expecting pumps. And that's exactly what happened, right? We got pumps over the next 2 weeks, but now I do expect a probably a little bit of a sell-off week, not because of anything bad or wrong with Zebec, but just because coins just don't simply go up 24/7. Going sideways is normal, going pulling back is normal. In this market, you guys have to realize in order to go up, you must go down, right? So it's just kind of like a staircase at the end of the day. You know, we go up and down, but ultimately in the day, we are continuously going up higher and higher. We can see, the price action has been beautiful, right? That we've been just following fundamentals for weeks now. But I expect, like I said, a little bit of pullback, right? We had a nice resurgence from the 7th and the 8th all the way up to, so we ping pong off of this zone 0.0036. Then we ping pong down a little bit lower, then we ping ponged higher once again up to 0.0043 zone, right? Then we ping pong just a little bit lower, nothing too crazy. Then we burst it up all the way up to 0.0057 area. Boom. And now we can see, ladies and gentlemen, yes, we have pinged a little bit lower to 0.0047, but I do believe that instead of pinging up like the way we have been consistently, if we go see, boom, like this, you can see the arrows, right? Instead of going up higher, I do believe we will ping, our top is 0.0053, and we will sell off a little bit lower. But just because we are preparing for a bigger pump in the near future, right? You got to remember, just like a human, just like anything, like we as humans need to rest. We need to go to sleep, we need to eat, etc. The same thing for the markets. The markets, they need to rest. They need to have a cool off period. And just think about it like that, right? The market's pulling back is practically like the market's going to sleep, regenerating, preparing to be healthy for the next pump. And, I expect for us to have, nothing too crazy of a sell off, right? Nothing too crazy in one day where we go down 20, 30%. But, making progress slowly to the downside is something I still expect, right? I expect for us to be kind of in this channel, right? Just kind of in this channel, just consistently going up and down. As we can see, we're already kind of doing it, right? We're pinging off. And, even though we did have a nice pump to 0.0054, the candle closes. When we look at the candles themselves, ladies and gentlemen, boom, we can see that we are closing lower, right? We are closing lower. So there are no confirmations yet that of like we're going to reverse the upside. Like I said, I don't expect for us to reverse the upside just yet. The last 2 weeks have been really, really good. So, like I said, a down period is expected, right? It is expected. And I do expect for us, probably to go back down. We could even go back down to all the way to 0.0042. Now, I'm not saying we're necessarily going to go that down all the way that there 100%, but there is a huge zone there, right? There is a very, very big zone. So this would be like the most fundamental play to kind of just sell off over the next week. The next start of the next week, start going sideways and then start seeing some type of resurgence, right? Just simple ping ponging. And yeah, I mean, like we've seen it here before we had a big rally, right? When Zebec was kind of consolidating for a very, very long time, going sideways for a couple of months. There was a point where it did have a nice momentum to the upside. It went from 0.0007 to 0.002, right? Very strict, narrow path, something like this in this diagonal channel. Boom. But then, right, we kind of went sideways, we kind of broke down. But then once we kind of went sideways and we broke down, right, we pulled back to then shoot further up. Now, I'm not saying the next, move to the upside is going to be a huge leg of a 3 times or 4 times pump, but I do believe the next leg to the upside is going to be ultimately to contest the all-time highs. Okay? Ultimately to contest the all-time highs. And that is what I expect. I kind of expect it to play out like this, where, we when we go back here, right, we had the one top, we had a second top, we had a little bit of sell off from the second top, and then we pumped, right? So the same thing is expected, where we go back fundamentally, possibly even all the way down to 0.0042 zone, and then once we make another attempt, we go to 0.007. There we sell off probably, I don't know, hard to say, 20 to 30% at most, probably going back around 0.0058. It would not be surprising if we do bounce off this nice zone, this nice top that we created in recent times, just a couple of days ago, right? Before we actually start exploding. And I do expect Zebec to exploding, or to start exploding. Sorry. Crypto, Bitcoin has recovered a couple thousand already, right? We talked about how Bitcoin was looking to come back down to fill up a gap, right? And that's exactly what happened. It filled up a gap at 113,000, 114,000. There was a gap. It got filled up, right? It started to go sideways. We started to consolidate and we're looking to be reversing up. And, that does mean obviously more green days for something like Zebec. Zebec alone has been actually, outperforming a lot of coins. You guys have to realize that Zebec has been outperforming so many coins. Even just in general, right? Even over the last few days, if we go to, let's say, ever since we expected the pumps, or even let's say the bottom of the 2 weeks ago, we went up 86%, 85, 86% in 2 weeks. No other coin has done that. ICP has been sitting here at the bottom. H bar, has been just going sideways. Turbo has been, if Turbo can load, Turbo has been slowly selling off. XRP has been slowly selling off. Ondo has just not done too much, sold off a little bit. Flux sold off. So like you know, we have been doing really good compared to the markets, to other coins. So, I think that's where some of the hate comes in. Some of that Zebec is a scam hate because other people see Zebec outperforming other cryptos and they simply just get jealous. But that is it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys did enjoy. I'll talk to you guys next time. Goodbye.